Hey guys, Britt here. Welcome to End Times Bible Prophecy. Make sure to hit the subscribe, like, and share buttons. Well, today we're going to talk about signs that the third temple is about to be rebuilt. And we're going to talk about what's happening on the ground, what the significance of all of that is, and how it all relates to Bible prophecy. So let's start with this right here. This is from Prophecy News Watch. It's from a few weeks ago. It's titled, Levites Tune Up in Anticipation of the Third Temple. I think this originally appeared in WorldNet Daily. Again, it's a few weeks old, so keep that in mind, especially as we read right here, where it says on Thursday, this was a Thursday that's long since passed, not yesterday, right? So it says on Thursday, the third intermediary day of Passover, Levites gathered in Jerusalem to reenact their musical role in the temple. A group of about 24 Levites gathered in the old city to practice their singing while wearing garments designed for use by the temple musicians in the third temple. The Levites also blew silver trumpets that had been prepared for use in the third temple. And I'm not going to read every word of this article because, they go on to give some background of what that means. But again, the purpose of this is they are preparing for the reconstruction of the Jewish temple. This would be the third temple. The Bible tells us that there will be a third temple. We'll get into that momentarily. But let's read a little bit more and see what this has to say. It says here, in the Bible, the tribe of Levi included Moses and Aaron. Kohanim, priest, are descendants of Aaron, and his descendants became a subset of the tribe of Levi. The other members of the tribe were chosen by God to forfeit their portions of land in Israel in order to serve in the temple. The Levites performed various functions in the temple, including guarding and serving all the musical needs. Jewish communities are scrupulous about perpetuating the status of the Levites, which is passed from father to son. Only Jewish men whose fathers were Levites are considered eligible. Comprising about 4% of the total Jewish population, they're recognized for conspicuous honors and religious services, and their status as Levites is inscribed on their gravestones. It says here, the Nezer HaKodesh Institute for Kohanic Studies is actively schooling Jewish priests to perform temple service. So if out of those who are eligible among the Levites, they are schooling future priests to serve in a third temple. And we're going to talk about more of this in just a moment, as it says here. It says, participants are being drawn from a registry of Kohanim prepared by the school's parent foundation, the Temple Institute for Jerusalem. We're going to look at that in just a moment. It says, which has already created nearly all of the vessels, furnishings, and priestly garments needed for a fully functional temple. To register for study, one must be certified as having a clear patriarchal link to the priestly class, be born and raised in Israel, and have observed the laws of purity required by priest. It says the school is not only instructing students on the Torah law that applies to priestly temple service, but also specialized topics such as the role and application of modern technology in the Third Temple, the mathematics of the Holy Temple. Also included are courses on aspects of engineering and design, and the topography of the Temple Mount. This instruction seems to suggest that the Kohanim may be involved in the actual design and or construction of the future temple. In fact, this was the case in Jerusalem after the Jewish people returned from exile in Babylon. We read in Ezra 1:5 that the priests and Levites, everyone whose heart God had moved, prepared to go up and build the house of the Lord in Jerusalem. And in Ezra 3:8, we learn that the leaders of Israel appointed Levites 20 years old and older to supervise the building of the house of the Lord. So guys, this mentions specifically an organization called the Temple Institute. And you can go look at their website. I'm going to pull that up right now, and you can go look at it. They are preparing for the rebuilding of the temple. In fact, right here we have their statement of principles. It says the Temple Institute is dedicated to all aspects of the divine commandment for Israel to build a house for God's presence, the holy temple on Mount Moriah in Jerusalem. The range of the Institute's involvement with this concept includes education, research, activism, and actual preparation. Our goal is firstly to restore temple consciousness and reactivate those, quote, forgotten commandments. We hope that by doing our part, we can participate in the process that will lead to the Holy Temple becoming a reality once more. So guys, no doubt about it, there is active involvement underway to rebuild the temple. This has been the case for many years, many years. I can't recall exactly when the Temple Institute was founded, but I want to say the late 1980s. I could be way off on that. Probably should have researched that before I did this video. I'm sorry about that. But it's been around for a while. This isn't a new development or an organization that cropped up yesterday. I'm not trying to say that. But they have been preparing actively for the construction of a third temple. And here on their website, they have this video. I'm going to play this. Yeah, it's muted. But this will give you an idea as you look at this of what they've already done to prepare for the rebuilding of the temple and creating, as it said, the vessels, the priestly garments, everything that is required in the Old Testament for temple worship has already been put together, already put in place. Most all of those things have already been created and are awaiting basically just the political decision to go ahead and rebuild the temple. And many people believe that within a month they could rebuild the temple. They could build it very quickly. And so as soon as that go ahead is given, whenever that may be, it won't take long for all of this to come together. So we had that video, but we also have, here's an example of some of the things they've created. So here is, we're seeing the golden menorah. So let's take a look at this. We'll just read this first paragraph. It says, the menorah, which stands today in Jerusalem's Old City Jewish quarter overlooking the Temple Mount, is the work of the Temple Institute. It was created exclusively to be used in the new Holy Temple. The menorah was painstakingly crafted after years of extensive research by the Temple Institute's full-time staff of researchers. The conclusions upon which the construction of the menorah was based took into account archaeological evidence and, of course, the Jewish law requirements of materials, dimensions, ornamental effects, and manner of manufacture as first delineated in the book of Exodus and further explicated by Jewish sages throughout the millennia. So they are reconstructing those things that are needed for the temple to be reconstructed and for sacrifices and for temple worship to take place once again for the first time in almost 2,000 years. Again, the temple was destroyed in the year 70 by Titus and the Roman legions. So there has not been a temple or the temple rituals taking place since that time. One of the things standing in the way there that they talk about on this site is the need for a red heifer. And as many of you know, there's been a lot of talk recently about the red heifer. It's appeared in many news stories. Here's one right here. Why is this important? Well, let's take a look at what they say here. So it says, This is in One for Israel. It says, the astonishing significance of red heifers in our day. You may have heard rumors about red heifers in Israel, hushed whispers of cattle kept in secret locations and clandestine sacrifices near the Temple Mount. Or perhaps you even saw the statement by Hamas a little while ago that it was these red heifers that precipitated Operation Al-Aqsa flood. That's right. Apparently the mere existence of some red cows in Israel triggered the October 7th massacre, according to a Hamas spokesman. Yes, and of course that's not true. We know that's not. That may have been one thing that they added to the list, but Hamas has been trying to destroy Israel, and this attack would have taken place no matter what. So that's just propaganda. But let's read on. It says, God's law given to the people of Israel at Mount Sinai included the requirement of perfect red heifers. No defects, no blemishes. The unyoked, flawless heifers become unkosher once hairs are spotted that are not uniformly red. They have to be perfect. What happens to these red heifers? Well, their fate is not good, at least from the cow's point of view. They're incinerated in complete totality, even including their dung. However, their death brings life, at least according to this article. The ashes of the red heifer were required for proper priestly sacrifices to be made in order to make atonement for sin. And this is outlined in the book of Numbers, chapter 19. So you can go and read those passages and see where that's required. It says, today this passage about the red heifers is read in synagogues in the lead up to Passover, since it concerns ritual cleansing. The portion of scripture in Numbers 19 relates to this cleansing issue, as those going up to make sacrifices could only do so if they had been cleansed by water mixed with the ashes of a perfect red heifer. Ever since the temple was destroyed by the Romans, this passage is read as part of the Passover preparations. So, as it says here, in order to institute the temple worship service once again, even you can construct the temple, you can have everything else, but in order to be compliant with God's law, they would have to have the ashes of a perfect red heifer mixed with water for this ritual cleansing prior to that happening. That's why we've seen much focus in recent times on will a red heifer be found? The red heifer's been found. What's going to happen? Are they going to sacrifice this red heifer? And that's what they talk about a little bit later in this article. So we go down in this portion, the incendiary effect of the red heifers in Israel. So this says, on Thursday afternoon, September 15th, 2022, at 5 p.m., 5 flawless red heifers arrived in Israel. So again, keep in mind, I don't think any red heifers had been known to exist since the time the temple was destroyed until the present time. So we want to keep that in mind. It says they were originally spotted in Texas and were flown all the way from the United States. The Temple Institute, yet again, this same group, dedicated to the restoration of a Jewish temple, reported a modest ceremony was held at the unloading bay of the cargo terminal at Ben Gurion Airport, where the new arrivals were greeted and speeches were made by the incredible people who put their hearts and souls and means into making this historic prophetic day become a reality. It says, that's right, they found some perfect red heifers. They're being kept under careful watch and not all in the same place. 3 are in Shiloh and can be seen by the public, but others are being kept safely elsewhere. More than that, preparations are being made to burn any that are still perfectly red, probably at Passover, or perhaps 50 days after that, at Shavuot, the Feast of Weeks. It's all happening But as exciting as this may be for those dedicated to the law of Moses, well, it's proved nothing short of a severe provocation to Israel's enemies. And again, that's the opinion of this article. I think Israel's enemies have, they're going to hate Israel regardless. This has really nothing to do with it. But of course, this article is also several weeks old. This did not occur at Passover. So the red heifer was not sacrificed and burnt. There were no ashes of the red heifer that we know of. I mean, maybe it happened in secret, but I don't think so. I think that probably would have been announced. But it says, or perhaps 50 days later at the Feast of Weeks. Well, that would coincide with June 12th, so that's still a future time where that could happen. But guys, we'll watch for that. We'll be aware. We're told to be watchmen and be watching for these things, and this is definitely something that we should be keeping our eyes on. And as we'll see, let's go back to the Temple Institute website and the Statement of Principles and cut down to the bottom. Because I found this interesting. It says the rebuilding of the Holy Temple in our time says the reality of the Jewish experience means that the temple will be rebuilt. And I agree with that. That's what the scriptures tell us. It says many people who visit the Temple Institute are incredulous and cannot help but exclaim, do you really think that you will live to see the Holy Temple rebuilt? The answer to that question is of little importance. Let us rather recall that Jewish history has a trajectory, which began when the patriarch Abraham smashed his father's idols. That trajectory has spanned the millennia. And it is obvious that we are rapidly approaching climactic times. And I will agree with that. Maybe not in the way that they think. But it says, in which the Holy Temple will once again become the focal point for mankind's spiritual focus. Whether this transpires in our generation or not, we can still choose to be active participants and not simply spectators in God's bold plan for the redemption of Israel and all humanity. Now again, this is their paragraph, not mine. God's bold plan for the redemption of Israel and all of humanity is Jesus Christ on the cross, shedding his blood, dying so that he would pay the penalty for our sins. He would stand in our place and grant us the ability to be reconciled with God. And he died on the cross, and then he rose from the dead. That is God's bold plan for the redemption of Israel and all of humanity. And that's happened once for all times. A third temple is not required as part of that. And I know there it says you can choose to be active participants or spectators. To me, because of that, I'm not one who is advocating for the rebuilding of a temple. However, there are many born-again Christians who are actively participating. That's something that you have to pray and be guided by the Holy Spirit as to whether or not you want to do that. Again, this is going to be the Antichrist temple, not the Christ temple. So this is not part of God's bold plan for the redemption of Israel and all of humanity. But it is still something we should be watching, because as they say here, it's obvious we're rapidly approaching climactic times, and we are. Those climactic times will culminate in the tribulation period, the 7-year tribulation, at the end of which Jesus Christ will return to rule over this earth. And it says here, in which the Holy Temple will once again become a focal point for mankind's spiritual focus. And we know the Bible tells us that that is true, whether it is the focal point or a focal point. It definitely plays a prominent role because the Bible specifically talks about events during the tribulation directly linked with the Jewish temple. So let's take a look at what the Bible says, because that's what matters, not what the Temple Institute says or what I say or anybody else. This is from Matthew chapter 24, verses 15 through 16. This is Jesus speaking, and this is when his followers have come and said, tell us about the signs of your coming, the end of the age, the establishment of your kingdom. So tell us when all these things are going to happen. What should we be looking for? And he went on to explain many things. And one of those things that he points out, he says, the day is coming when you will see what Daniel the prophet spoke about, the sacrilegious object that causes desecration standing in the holy place. Reader, pay attention. Then those in Judea must flee to the hills. So Jesus is saying that there will be this sacrilegious object. It's called the abomination of desolation, the abomination that makes desolate. So the Antichrist will enter the temple at the midpoint of the tribulation, as we'll read about in this next section, because we know some people have speculated, well, this already happened with the Roman legions did this, but that is not true, because he specifically cites what Daniel spoke about. And we're going to read that here in just a second to find out exactly what he's talking about. This is an event that will take place in the tribulation period. Therefore, that means that a temple must be rebuilt, because the temple was destroyed in the year 70. So that's, 1,954 years ago, if I'm doing my math right. It's a long time ago. No temple. It must be rebuilt. The scriptures tell us that it must be rebuilt. Jesus said that this is one of the things to look for that will indicate the nearness of his return. And he specifically mentioned Daniel. So here's what he was talking about. This is from Daniel chapter 9, verse 27. It says, the ruler, and the ruler they're talking about here is the Antichrist. It says, the ruler will make a treaty with the people for a period of one set of 7. Guys, that's 7 years is what that means. We know from other verses in the Bible that the confirming of that covenant, the signing of that treaty for that period of 7 will be what kicks off the 7-year tribulation period. So keep that in mind as we read the rest of this. It says, but after half this time, so meaning in the middle of that 7-year period, the 7-year tribulation, so the midpoint of the 7-year tribulation, it says, but after half this time, he will put an end to the sacrifices and offerings. So that tells us sometime before the midpoint of the tribulation, the temple must be rebuilt and the sacrifices and offerings will be taking place. It says, and as a climax to all his terrible deeds, he will set up a sacrilegious object that causes desecration until the fate decreed for this defiler is finally poured out on him. We read more in Paul's letter. This is 2 Thessalonians chapter 2, verse 4. He says, he, meaning the Antichrist, will exalt himself and defy everything that people call God and every object of worship. He will even sit in the temple of God, claiming that he himself is God. Guys, the Antichrist has not come. He comes during the tribulation period, which has yet to occur. In order for him to sit in the temple of God and claim that he himself is God, that temple must exist. That means it must be rebuilt. So what does that tell us? Well, when we see all of these things lining up, we see the preparations being made, priests being trained, red heifers being sought out. We see all of these things lining up, and we know that very quickly the temple could be rebuilt and temple worship reinstituted. That's a sign, because we can't point to this for the last 1,954 years. Only in the last few years have we been able to point to seeing these things take place. And more, there's a call in Israel to rebuild the temple. And so how that happens exactly under what means remains to be seen. But the big picture is the Bible tells us it will happen. We're seeing signs that this is taking place, that preparations are being made to do this. And that tells us that we're getting near to the point that Jesus told us to look for. So in Matthew 24, he says, when you begin to see all these things, know that I'm right at the door. Know that your salvation draws near. So Mark 13, Luke 21, Matthew 24. And one of the things Jesus is saying to look for is the abomination of desolation that takes place at the midpoint of the tribulation. Again, you have to have a temple to do that. We're seeing the preparations made for that. You couple that with all these other signs we see. There has to be a nation of Israel where there is today. The Jewish people had to be back in control of Jerusalem. They are. The gospel is being preached to people all around the world. The ultimate fulfillment of that will come during the tribulation period, but we're seeing that to a degree that past Christians could only imagine. We're seeing the rise of the Gog and Magog alliance, calls for global government, all of these various signs that we go over and over, and the convergence of all of those signs tells us that we are getting very near to the 7-year tribulation period, the return of Jesus at the end of that 7-year tribulation period. And that means the rapture of the church is even closer, because I believe the Bible teaches us that takes place before the tribulation. So guys, all of this tells us Jesus is coming, and Jesus is coming soon. So we need to do everything we can to be sharing the good news of Jesus Christ, because what did they say? What did they say back in that article? Let me pull it back up. God's bold plan for the redemption of Israel and all of humanity. The Temple Institute thinks it's the rebuilding of this temple. You and I know that it's Jesus Christ. He is God's bold plan for the redemption of Israel and all of humanity. And we need to be sharing that good news with as many people as we can, with everybody we can, with whatever time we may have left. So guys, what do you think? Leave your comments below. Let me know what you think. Do you think they should rebuild this temple? Do you think the ashes of the red heifer will come in the next June 12th? I don't know. We'll watch. We'll see what happens. But I do know this for certainty. The Bible tells us there will be a third temple, and the Bible's track record is 100% perfect, accurate. Therefore, it will happen, and we're seeing all the signs that are leading up to it. So, again, let me know what you think. Leave your comments below. Make sure to hit the like, share, and subscribe buttons. And God willing, I'll see you on Monday. Bye. If you want to learn more about the end times and Bible prophecy, make sure to visit my Substack at brittgillette.substack.com. There you'll find my latest videos and articles, as well as notes, where I share the latest news headlines, the articles I'm reading, and the videos I'm watching. Subscribe for free, and each new post on Substack will be sent directly to your email. Just scroll to the bottom of the homepage and hit the subscribe button. As an added bonus, your first welcome email will include a link to a copy of my free ebook, 7 Signs of the End Times. Also, make sure to check out all of my books. Just look up Britt Gillette on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Apple iBooks, Google Books, Kobo, or anywhere books are sold. Thanks for watching today, and until next time, keep your eyes fixed on Jesus, the author and perfecter of our faith.